Listen, I have made a lot of mistakes and committed some awful sins. I used to be heavy into drinking, drugs, pornography, you name it, and I was about it. Due to these poor life decisions, I believed God wanted nothing to do with me, and I fell out of his reach. This contributed to me attempting suicide 2 times. I grew angry at life, and this anger sent me to prison for 5 years. But in county jail, at my lowest, in my worst time in life, Jesus saw me and changed my life for the better. There's a story in the Bible I want to link this up with. In the latter part of Luke chapter 22, Jesus is being arrested and led away to be crucified. Verse 54 says, "So they arrested him and led him to the high priest's home, and Peter followed at a distance." I want to emphasize the last part. Peter followed at a distance, remember that. Verse 55 says, "The guards lit a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat around it, and Peter joined them there." So Peter is not alone, but in the company of the guards who arrested Jesus and those surrounding the fire with him. To move the story along, Peter was asked and then accused 3 times about being a disciple of Jesus, and each time Peter denied ever knowing him. This was probably the worst sin Peter had ever committed in his life. With that in mind, pay attention to what happens next. After his 3rd denial, verse 61 says, "At that moment the Lord turned and looked at Peter. And Peter left the courtyard weeping bitterly." So there's a lot here. We need to break this thing down a little bit. Peter, handpicked by Jesus himself to be one of his 12 disciples. Peter, the man who walked on the water with Jesus. Peter, the man who witnessed so many miraculous miracles, has just committed the worst sin of his life. This was Peter's lowest moment. Peter knew what he had done. Peter knew he had denied Jesus. And through the chaos of Jesus' arrest, while Peter was at his worst, Jesus turned and looked at Peter, and their eyes locked in. It's only natural to think that Jesus looked at Peter with anger or aggravation, but I believe when their eyes met, Peter was confronted by the love and truth in Jesus' eyes, which revealed his sin and caused him to go away weeping hysterically. Jesus was not surprised by what Peter had done. In verses 31 to 34, Jesus actually tells Peter that he would deny him. This is a powerful point right here, because Jesus knew exactly the sin Peter would commit, but he saw Peter's potential and loved him through it. The same applies to you and me. Jesus knew every sin we would commit, yet he willingly left heaven and came and died for us. That is love. Romans 5:8 says, "But God showed his great love for us by sending Christ to die for us while we were still sinners." Here's my point. No matter what you have done or how long you have been in sin, you are not too far from Jesus to be forgiven. Satan's goal is to get us as far away from the love of God as possible. But what he fails to realize is that God sees us wherever we are. When I was at the peak of my addiction, snorting cocaine, going to dope houses, strip clubs, having bouts of rage, and on my way to prison, Jesus saw me. It was not until I was sitting in a church service in county jail that mine and Jesus' eyes locked. He saw me at my worst, and his love penetrated my heart, causing me to surrender my life to him. What I didn't realize was Jesus was looking at me the whole time and was just waiting for me to look to him. Maybe the love of Jesus is tugging on your heart right now. Don't run from his love. His eyes are on you to do you good. The same Jesus who asked his Father to forgive the men who were murdering him, the same Jesus who saw Peter through the crowd after he committed the worst sin of his life, is the same Jesus who sees you at your worst. You might be ready to give up and think suicide is the only way out, but Jesus sees you and is waiting for you to look to him for help. You might be trapped in addiction and think you will never be free, but Jesus sees you and is waiting for you to look to him for help. You might not even believe in Jesus, but Jesus sees you and he believes in you. Look to him because he is looking at you.